Welcome to the Captain's Wife. I haven't been here for many, many years. And there's a lot of history around here about the area and Sully Island, but I'm not the person to tell you that. We have our local historian and expert. So Graham will tell you a little bit about the history of this area, including the Captain's Wife, Sully Island maybe, yeah, Graham?
Beautiful. Okay, hi everyone. Well, we've got a lot of history here. Going back to prehistory, really. I mean, you're probably aware that this coast along here is Jurassic, and that there are dinosaur footprints between here and Barry. So there's been life here of one form or another for a very, very long time. This island behind us, for those who aren't familiar with the area, that gets cut off by the tide. But that island has sustained life probably since the Bronze Age. The remains on there of an Iron Age hill fort, which are about 2000 BC. So very, very early life. And you can just, if you look on the far side, on the left-hand side, you can just make out a few earthworks. There's not a lot of it left, but this was still in use at the time of the Roman invasion. So it was in use for a very, very long time. And the charismatic tribal leader of the Silures, Caradog, or Caractacus in Latin, this was one of his strongholds, one of his defensive outposts against the invaders. So it came into use in later history as a smuggler's cove, because once you got sort of, for the 200-year period between the 16th and the 18th century, smuggling, wrecking, piracy were a way of life for all the communities of coastal Vale of Glamorgan. And that was a particularly good place where they could stash booty away, bringing it in on a boat when the tide was in, and then as soon as the tide went out, then they could just go out and collect it. There was a customs officer stationed in the village of Sully, and he was known to be a very timid man, not at all comfortable with any kind of confrontation. And he was issued by his superiors with something of a fait accompli, that if he didn't get out there and confiscate some booty or make some arrests, that he was going to find himself in very deep water. So he went out there with his stomach in his mouth, was delighted to find that the island was deserted, but equally delighted to find 2 barrels of contraband, which he carried back to his cottage, hid them under the bed, and locked all the doors and windows, really looking forward to the following morning when he would be able to present this to his superiors as a great victory. When he woke in the morning, the barrels had gone, but all his doors and windows were still locked on the inside. So he apparently left this place, swearing never to return to this godforsaken place again. There's a lot of folklore around here, around piracy and smuggling. And also attached to the buildings that we see around us. Now, quite a few of these buildings are more recent, but certainly the Captain's Wife, that was a series of cottages, fishermen's cottages, and there was quite a large house, which is still now, I'm not sure I think it might be a nursing home or something, but there's a large building called Sully House, which is just beyond us. And there's a lovely bit of folklore attached to how the Captain's Wife got its name. So I'll tell you the story, and then I'll give you an insight into something of the nature of folklore. So there was a sea captain, and we're going back probably 17th century. So there was a sea captain who was very, very much in love with his wife, and they were spoken about, just a very, very celebrity kind of loving couple in the area. And he, because of the nature of his work, had to spend a lot of time away. But he returned on some shore leave to discover to his dismay that she had died literally a day before. So he came so close to seeing her for the last time. And at that moment, he swore that they would never be parted again. So rather than having her buried, he kept her remains in a wooden chest in the cottage. And this secret remained under wraps until one day some burglars broke into the house, found the chest, assuming that they had some treasure, and opened it, and to their horror discovered the decomposing remains of the Captain's Wife. And that story is how this pub ended up with his name. Now, is anyone from Sully here? No. Penarth, right. Have you heard a different version of that?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Is it haunted?
Well, I'm coming to that because it's supposed to be haunted, but this is something of the nature of folklore. So ordinary people, up until well, the 20th century really. They got all their history from storytellers and bards, because they weren't being educated, they weren't being taught history by academics. And of course, the bard's job was to entertain rather than be, you know, historically accurate with the stories that they told. So one of the devices that you would quite often find is that you would have a story told about somebody in one area, and the bard would hear this story and go, oh, that's a good story. I wonder how I can take this home. And so what you end up with, I mean, there's a very famous story of the Maid of Cefnedfa, and you know, there's no way that that story is about that couple, because that story goes back millennia. It's a really old story, and bards just move around the country taking the story and just recast the local celebrity loving couple in the lead role. So we've actually got 3 stories about the captain's wife. There's the one that I just told you, and there's another 2. One of them is that Colonel Poyner, who was a real person, he was very prominent in the English Civil War. Colonel Poyner took a wife who was much younger than him, and she wanted for nothing materialistically, but secretly her heart belonged to her childhood sweetheart, who was this gallivanting, chivalrous sea captain. And when he returned on shore leave, he and the 2 of them made a pact that they would elope and remarry in secret somewhere in the colonies. But their plan was foiled when Poyner discovered what they were up to, and he caught them in the act of eloping, and he managed to catch his wife by the arm. The captain managed to escape, but he murdered his wife in rage and then threw her remains down the well, which is somewhere in these grounds. And coming to the ghost story, there is a story that her ghost haunts the pub, and she is seen pointing to where her remains are hidden because she wants them to be exhumed so she can have a proper Christian burial. And the third story is that, again, sea captain and his wife very much in love, but so much in love that they could not bear to be parted, so he smuggled her onto the vessel that he was serving on, considered to be really bad luck to have a woman on board. So when one of his lieutenants discovered her, he was so outraged that he challenged him to a duel. And then on the next beach they landed on, they drew pistols, and inadvertently in the crossfire, the captain's wife died from a glancing shot, and the 2 of them were left wherever they were, he to remorse himself for the loss of his wife. So there we go. So maybe one of those stories is true.
Which one do you prefer, Graham?
I like the first one. It's a bit more gory, the first one, but I think...
There's 4
Is there 4?
Oh,
Oh, wonderful.
Over the point again, mate.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, that's what happens with folklore, because you quite often hear. I've discovered one quite recently. There used to be a Welsh. The Vale of Glamorgan used to have pockets of English-speaking areas and Welsh-speaking areas, and one of the Welsh-speaking areas was around Barry and Porthcurry, and there was a legend about a lady from a great family who'd been cursed by a witch and turned into a fox, and the fox was known as Catty Cum Kiddy. And the Cum Kiddy is the name of the stream that has its estuary in Porthcurry. And Catty Cum Kiddy was meant to be hundreds of years old, so possibly several generations of foxes that look very similar, I don't know. But it was considered, if you ever saw the fox, you were expected to give it food. It was bad luck if you didn't. And she also had the ability to momentarily retake human form. So again, if you saw a stranger with sand in their hair, because the foxes were frequently seen on the beach, because the woods trail right the way down to the beach, again, you were expected to offer food, because it was very bad luck if you didn't, and she may take the form of a fox in the night and come back and eat your children. That was the sort of idea. But then you go a couple of miles down the coast and you get to St. Donat's, which was an English-speaking part of the Vale. There is a legend there of a fox called Kate. Now, they could have been a bit more imaginative with the name, but a fox called Kate, who again was capable of taking human form, was hundreds of years old, and was so frequently seen on the beach that there's a cave there called Reynolds Cave. And Reynold is a derivation of renard, which of course is French for fox. So there we are, it happens everywhere. People pinch each other's stories and retell them and cast them off as their own. That's pretty much it from me. Enjoy your walk, and thank you for your attention this morning.